So thank you everyone for coming to tonight's Township Board of Trustees on November 27th. If we could please start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and so today we don't have two of our members, one of which is our clerk, so we have Tom will be acting in the capacity of doing public comment and really reining it all in. So there we go. So first we will start with public comment. If anybody would like to come on up and speak, just come on up to the podium. As always, your name in 3 minutes.
My name is Mark Contackley. I reside at 1550 Georgetown Drive. My public comment is in regards to item number 10. The township is seeking approval to increase the defined benefit pension contribution. Yet the numbers are already reflected in the preliminary budget presentation. That appears to be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. And you can go down and you can, as you review it, you'll see those numbers pop up and increased, and they're equivalent to what's in item 10. Secondly, if you're going to look at increasing the dollar values, there are a couple different ways on the contributions you can do it. There are contributions typically that the township makes in February based on the actuarially determined contributions. You can pull those forward to November and change the results if you want in February and increase it again at that time. Either way, it wouldn't matter. But more funds might be available. In addition, is it better to put the funds in the Retirement Healthcare Trust? And would that reduce the annual payment of $1.25 million because the township would be closer to a 25% funded ratio? That might be better long-term for the township. I'm also concerned about liquidity risk in the pension trust. Brian Green was stated during the last financial sustainability meeting that the funds under management by the township hit about 20% return on investment earlier this year. Yet none of the funds on the growth side were removed and placed into less risky assets. We all see the 4 to 5% returns on bank accounts. The township even discusses that in item 10. And so why not pull those out and reduce the low side risk on those investments? Would definitely help out the township and performance of the fund, and hopefully and reduce our overall risk and hopefully retain some assets. The township can also do the same thing with the annual the contributions, actually determined contributions, and set those aside for an investment, low risk investment, and use that to pay the monthly benefits. Those would also help the township. But those discussions don't occur. The KPI associated with setting up a strategy is not available at this time, nor is the investment policy. So hopefully those will be discussed in item 10. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment? All right, I will go ahead and close public comment. Next, we come to the approval of the board minutes for November 13th. We've all had a chance to look them over. Unless there's any changes, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Murray.
Support.
Support by Trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That passes. Next, we have introduction of our new police officers, and we have Chief Jimmy Gallagher here today.
Good evening, and than's for having us again. I have to admit,
And Captain Dan Brown.
and Captain Dan Brown too.
Sorry.
We have to admit we're a little bit behind on bringing people forward in front of you, the new officers, but there several of them here tonight, and one I think is on vacation, so we'll do him another night. Real quick before I start, though, I just was speaking with Supervisor Walsh before, and I think it's important to give a little bit of a crime update. Again, this weekend, not in Bloomfield Township, but in surrounding jurisdictions, there were the high-end home invasions again. We know of 6 that occurred this weekend. We are still relating this group back to a theft group that's targeting all of Oakland County and portions of Wayne County, we believe. So I just want to I don't know if a lot of people watch the meetings, but it's important to go back to lights on in residences, making sure your alarms are set, inspecting everything in your home to make sure that it's working. These home invasions, there's losses in millions of dollars at this point throughout Oakland County and part of Wayne County. And so we're trying to get the word out. We'll be getting word out again more, hopefully in the coming weeks. But this is a pretty large group that's active all throughout the United States. And there's been 4 active arrests of groups of individuals over the last probably month, and that hasn't stopped them at all. Just another crew comes in and replaces them. So I think that's an alert we need to get out. And again, we'll get some more information out here hopefully in the near future without jeopardizing the cases. So
you also mentioned lock their doors on their cars.
Yeah, and always lock your door. Go back to Officer Soley put out our crime prevention stuff, 9 o'clock routine. Hit, while you're at home, before you go to bed, hit those car alarms and make sure that the keys are in the home, number 1, and that the cars are locked, number 2, and any valuable items are out of them. We're not seeing many vehicle break-ins where they're breaking windows or breaking anything to get in. The majority of the cars that we've had stolen this year are keys in the vehicle and are unlocked vehicles. So just as a reminder, it's easy to forget. We've all done it, but it's very important right now to remind our residents of that. So we got some more information on our way in, so I figured we should get that out there. So let's introduce some new officers. Gunther, come on up. Gunther Brieger. He's our new badge number 342. You can come over and stand with Dan. Gunther is a hometown kid. We like to call him because I never thought I'd say that, but when I was going through all their guys' paperwork, half of them graduated high school, like in 2014 or 15. Anyway, Gunther grew up in Bloomfield Township. He graduated Bloomfield Hills High, class of 2014. Were you the first class?
Yeah, of the new school.
Of the new school. That makes, yeah. He obtained his bachelor's degree from Oakland University with a degree in criminal justice, a minor in sociology, and then a concentration in addiction studies. He graduated from the Oakland Police Academy. After that, he was hired by the Madison Heights Police Department, where he spent several years, 2 or 3 years, before coming back home here to Bloomfield Township. But we got him with a little bit of a bonus. He came to us. He had just attended Evidence Technician School at Madison Heights, and was also one of their what we call FANS, quick response team, which is a team that goes out and looks for in response to people have overdosed or been in issues with drugs. They go out within 72 hours and try to make contact with peer coaches. We have our core program, but that's kind of what they have down in Madison Heights, and it's what I would say is a successful program, but he comes with that experience. So we're glad that he decided to come home, even though he was there and had a successful career there. He decided to move back towards us. So welcome, Gunther. And he's been on his own now 2 months about?
3 months.
About 2 months. So he accelerated through our program because of his experience. So he's on his own.
Do you have anyone here with you that you want to introduce?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
He's on duty tonight, so we yanked him off the road.
All right.
He's heading out there, I believe. So, good job.
Aw.
Welcome, Gunther.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's the ship. We hired Joel Perry. Joel came from Wayne State, but he's not. He's on vacation, so I think we can just wait for another night for him. So, Jake. Jake can spell his last name for you guys. Jake Sismadia, right? He's badge 345. And so when many of us started, we always said, man, when there's 100 badge numbers after you, because they go in sequential, you know you've been here a long time, and they're catching up to, they're past you, Matt and Andy. They're coming on your heels, buddy. But Jake grew up in Clarkston in the Waterford area. He's a graduate of Our Lady of Lakes High School. His dad is a retired Warren police officer where he spent an entire career, like 25 years, and wasn't done at that point, went and spent 7 years in Ferndale and just retired out of Ferndale in the last probably few months. So he continued. Jake attended Rochester College before transferring to Olivet to play baseball. He graduated there with a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in journalism and mass communication. Jake was a cadet for Milford and for Novi prior to the academy. And then when he went to the academy at Oakland Police Academy, graduated there, and he's been on solo patrol. So he just finished our 17-week FTO program. I think it was 2 weeks ago this weekend.
Yes, sir.
So I always tell them, there's always somebody next to you to talk to you, but your bag doesn't talk back when it's the only one there. So good luck. So yeah, he got to experience, I know he worked yesterday, and you experienced probably your first snowstorm, or snow, at least the first snow of the year. Yeah. And in Bloomfield Township, that's a busy night. So welcome, Jake. Anybody here? Okay. Mr. Schneeman, come on up. John is badge 347. John, Officer Schneeman is a graduate of Livonia Stevenson High School. I think they're the Spartans. We don't say that, go blue.
Go blue.
Yeah. I understand it's high school, but it's still strong.
Say it over here.
Especially
I know.
Go blue.
We're good with Spartans.
I know. I am too. I like Neil. John earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Madonna University in 2017. He went on to attend the Wayne County Regional Police Academy and graduated in May of 2018. From there, he was hired by the South Lyon Police Department, where he spent his last, 5 years-ish. And believe it or not, he came to us. He was just promoted to sergeant out there in January of 2023, and we were able to convince him to come over to Bloomfield Township. While there at South Lyon, he was a defensive tactics instructor and a member of the Mobile Field Force, which is our consortium that if there were to be some type of civil unrest, they're called in for all of Oakland County and are trained in that level of field. So John is married to his wife, Claire, and she's here today. So we're excited to have John. Again, he comes from South Lyon with some experience. He'll go through our field training program, which literally is probably, 2 weeks in now? So it'll be it's scheduled to be 17 weeks, but with his experience, hopefully it'll get him on the road a little bit sooner on a solo patrol. So I know he has family here he can introduce.
Yeah, my wife.
Can you come up to the...
Yeah, come on.
Oh, yeah.
Use your big boy.
Big voice.
My wife Claire there in the green. And then a good friend of mine, James Schmick, he comes to us from the Southfield Police Department.
We are hiring.
He's a Bloomfield
Tell them
native.
I said that, but we're hiring.
Yeah. And then my mom and dad, Jan and Clark. So, thank you.
Thanks, John. We can call up Christopher, and I already told his parents he's going to have a nickname of Kamaj, because we always thought his last name was Kamaj, C-M-A-J, and it's Samai. Yeah. So now when he told us today, I'm like, who? Kamaj started it today. So his dad said it's okay. But we'll make sure we get it right. Christopher started with us today, his very first day, and I'm going to embarrass him, but one of our dispatchers greeted him this morning, and she said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Today's my first day." So he was excited. But he began his employment literally today with us. He is a graduate from Farmington Hills High School, so somewhat local, in 2016. He obtained his associate's degree from Schoolcraft College and then earned his bachelor's degree from Wayne State in 2022. His bachelor's is in psychology and a minor in biological sciences. We're gonna find something for you to do. Maybe some forensic stuff.
I was just gonna say.
So he'll start literally today he'll do an administrative week starting today, and then he'll do his 17 weeks of field training, which is an intense program. He literally just graduated the Wayne County Regional Police Academy on November 9th. So we're excited to have him here, and I know he can come up and introduce. He has his family here. Yeah. Come on up, Chris.
Okay, so I guess from left to right, my brother Valentino. My dad, Mark, sister, Gabriella, mom, Pashka, and then my girlfriend, Elizabeth.
So we're excited for all them to start, and it brings us to 7 current openings. So hopefully we have about 3 more, I think, Dan, in the pipeline for us to hire, but we're still going to have 4 or 5 more after that.
Can we bring you up around the chief to get a picture of everybody?
Yeah.
Come on, Dan. Yeah, that way we can.
You're fine.
You're under trust. You just stand in the back. You'll be fine. All right. 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
We are still hiring.
Yeah. Thanks for having us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. So next we have the presentation of the 48th District Court budget for 2024-2025. It'll be presented by the Court Administrator, Patrick Dunn. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, good evening. My name is Patrick Dunn. I'm the Court Administrator at the 48th District Court. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present the court's budget for 2024. I know it's part of the written agenda tonight that we provided, sort of twofold. One of them is to give everyone an idea of what's going on at the court over the last year. We call it the court in review, and then we also provided the financial picture for the court and what we're requesting for 2024 to operate the court effectively and efficiently. I just wanted to highlight, I had this opportunity on behalf of the judges and the rest of the staff, some of the things that have happened over the last year that have really impacted the operations of the court. In April, the one that was most noteworthy was the second leg of what they call the Clean Slate Act. The first leg of that, a good example, was like first-time drunk drivings became eligible for set-asides or expungement, they'll call it. And those were by application. In other words, someone had to apply to the court, go before the sentencing judge, and present a picture as to why their case should be set aside, that the requisite number of years have expired, haven't picked up any new offenses, things of that nature. The second leg of the Clean Slate Act, which happened in April, was what they call automatic set-asides. And that is where 7 years has expired and a case that is eligible just automatically is expunged. Does not have to go before the judge. There is no requirement that the case be closed necessarily. So all of a sudden the court is, going into in old files, old cases on its case management system, and dealing with cases that have been set aside and are no longer public. We have to make sure that we make them non-public. But we also have to deal with the fact that some of these cases might be in bench warrant status. Some of these cases could still have money owing to the court, and dealing with the implications of how to deal with those cases. You have to remember, our case management system from an electronic standpoint goes back to about 1980. So on the first day of automatic set-asides, we had about 13,000 charges automatically set aside. We're nearly over 100,000 as it currently stands. So over a pretty short period of time, that's a lot of old files, old cases, where all of a sudden we're getting a lot of telephone calls, we're getting a lot of records requests because people want to make sure that their case has been automatically set aside. They want to make sure that their case has been non-public. So we've had to deal with, just some administrative part of dealing with those cases. The next thing that is very exciting, that we're excited for, is that in a couple weeks from now, December 5th, we're going to go live with electronic filing in our civil department. It's part of the My File that the state of Michigan has rolled out. We are excited that the court, 48th District Court, was selected to go live. We've been participating in training over the last few months to prepare for that. It's just going to be for our civil departments at this point, so small claims, general civil cases, landlord-tenant cases. Will be sort of, I guess you could say, dipping our toe into the water with the end goal that everything eventually go electronic. The Supreme Court is very interested in access to courts, and this will allow, obviously, it would be for attorneys only, although non-attorneys can use the My File system if they open an account and undergo the training. But attorneys will be required to electronically file for those civil cases. So it will allow them to file from anywhere where they're located, any time of the day. We will be receiving paperwork that our court will now be dealing with and processing on a remote basis like that, but hopefully it will make us a lot more efficient once we get going with it. And I know we are really looking forward to it. We are very paper-driven still, a little bit behind maybe the rest of corporate America and the rest of it, but this will be our first foray into really getting into that where we can go paperless and not have the case files and the storage and those things to really cut down on that. The other thing that we have also are dealing with right now is the state of Michigan. We were offered the opportunity to migrate our server over to the state server, and we jumped at that chance. It's a chance for us to really save some long-term money so that the state will take over all the updates and the security measures when it comes to our server where we store our case management system. So this will allow us to really cut down on some of the long-term expenses that we have with that. It will also allow the state to, like my file, to do updates seamlessly with our court and really make us more efficient in that matter as well. So those are just some of the things from like court operations that have happened over the last year and are happening that I just wanted to make you aware of and sort of highlight. From the financial side, you'll see from the pages in the agenda that we submitted, we were able to keep our budget flat. The total amount of the budget is the same as was last year. The amount that Bloomfield Township would be advancing for that budget is a little less this year, as Bloomfield Township's caseload has gone down over the last several years. So if you look back from 21, 22, 23, there's been a general decline. So the amount that the Bloomfield Township would be advancing for that budget has declined. Some of the areas that we were able to keep the budget flat, information technology, that's sort of like the migration of the server that allows us to cut down on case management user fees. So we were able to save money in areas like that, working with some of our vendors on service contracts. We've worked really hard to make sure that we're trying to be as cost conscious as possible. We're doing the same thing with our staffing at this time. We have not added any new personnel at this point. We've only had replacements for positions that needed to be filled. So we're at the same number. And that's kind of been an offset for some of the areas that have gone up, the medical, some of the utilities, what we pay our magistrates, but we were able to keep the budget flat. So I know in the written agenda, there is the amount that Bloomfield Township, we would be asking that they, if the budget was approved, they would be advancing, which is $1,487,422 for the overall operation of the court. That is broken down, the quarterly payments that Bloomfield Township would be is broken down on page 19 of the court's written proposal. We are asking that this budget be approved. We do believe it's reasonable and necessary to provide the services that the court provides. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
I do. Pleased to see that 48th District Court is becoming more electronically driven. That's something helpful not only for the attorneys, but in the long run for clients. And as you mentioned, storage, saving a lot of money that way also. So that's a really benefit to everybody. I did have a question. And have there been any efforts to try and bring the city of Bloomfield Hills back in as an equal partner?
Obviously, their departure as well as the operating agreement between the funding units, the court's not a party to that to that contract.
I can give.
We are certainly
make it more comfortable for you. Do you want me to give the update?
No, we are
It's
aware
kinda
of.
two separate. It's not his.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, but I can give you an update that so a year ago in January, when there was discussion of Birmingham pulling out based on that, there are still continuous discussions of whether or not Birmingham will stay in. If they did, that would be catastrophic. If they did not, because of course then we'd have to also get out of that agreement. And then the discussions were, would it be West Bloomfield, us, and the three littles, and then Birmingham and Bloomfield Hills would kind of be off on their own. I think the reality of the cost of running their own courts is what's kind of keeping everyone together. But logistically, or statutorily, Bloomfield Hills is a third district, correct me if I'm wrong, where they are not forced into the funding. They have to opt in. So what Birmingham is asking is for all of the four littles to just give up all revenue and donate it to the three funding units. They would all have to agree to that because statutorily they are given the 1/3. I haven't heard of any agreement on that of all four of them saying, because all four would have to say yes. So we will have a standing January special meeting every year to protect ourselves. So that if Birmingham ever does, we think with new management over there in that city, but I don't expect Bloomfield Hills to come back in.
That was my thought, but I just thought it was important that people
Yeah.
are aware based on the history of what happened in the past year.
And we do hope that if they do come forward and say, but I haven't heard of any push from Bloomfield Hills to get back in. And then with the request from Birmingham to the other 4, the last meeting that we had with the funding units, the 3 of us, was that there were still the 4 had not agreed. Only 1, I think, at the current time has agreed of the 4 to give in all of their. And again, like, this is not a lot of money. So frankly, just so you know, I don't know how you all feel about this, but personally, not as the whole board, but personally myself, some of these people are like 5,000, 7,000. So you're taking away 10% of their budget that we will not even notice. So West Bloomfield and us have both kind of said, like, you're attacking the wrong people. You're upset with Bloomfield Hills, but you're attacking Kego, Sylvan, and Orchard Lake, because that means that the police force that is funded by the funds from the court in Sylvan Lake are affected. So I'm not sure why they've decided that that's where Birmingham is focused on. I think that was their only way to get Bloomfield some sort of response to Bloomfield Hills.
Okay.
But other than that, I think we're kind of at the point where it's going to be the 3 of us going forward.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you just discussing that. It's good to have that.
And I would assume we might be meeting again to talk more about it in January, because now that ours has gone down, Birmingham's went up. So there'll be more discussions at their side of what to do. And again, we always point out the court is not a funding source. It's kind of like saying we're not making enough money off our fire. Like, you don't expect to make money off your transports. You're not supposed to make money off the court. It's a service you provide. And I think that was the miscommunication that a previous manager was promoting in those areas, both Bloomfield Hills and Birmingham. A mayor in Bloomfield Hills and a manager in Birmingham were miscommunicating to their groups that this is supposed to make you money. And I think now that both of those voices are out, we're hoping,
well,
because the city manager is different.
It's to break even and cover your costs.
Right. But then some years you don't, like some years we don't break even on fire, but it wouldn't mean that you just stop doing the fire. And we're trying to get that message out there of it's not a profit center. And I think the ex-mayor of Bloomfield Hills and the previous manager of Birmingham had that concept, which luckily the new ones don't think that way.
Okay. Appreciate it.
But we will have a standing January 31st special meeting ready to go if somebody does pull a trigger to protect ourselves and our taxpayers. So.
Okay.
Does
With
that help?
it does. No. With that said, unless there's anything else, just like a motion.
Oh, you have a
Yeah, go
question?
ahead.
Patrick.
Yes.
So on page 17, show cash distribution 2023. And we're getting, make sure I'm understanding this, we're getting 811,000. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For
Now,
2023.
yeah, part of that is projected, though.
Understood.
Yes.
But I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's money we're receiving back. And by comparison, we're being asked to fund almost 1.5 million next year. So,
Correct.
You know, if this year's any guide, we're getting roughly 60% of our money back. But as you said, this is something required as part of criminal justice, and so we have to do it.
And some years we have
Yeah.
actually made a profit. Some we haven't. It's just we always like to point out is statutorily
Sure.
we have to provide a court. So it's
And the funding percentages are based on the caseload, and that's a 2-year look back.
Yes.
Our caseload in 2022 is what's determining our contribution in 2024.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. But we get paid based on actual caseload.
You get, so for instance, if we're here, talking, it's 2023, your advancement, what you provided to the court for the budget was based on 2021 audited caseload.
Okay.
Your distributions, though, that we've made this year was based on 2022 audited caseload, because we then had that information available.
Okay, so it's nothing's in real time. We're not getting a third quarter distribution based on our caseload in the third quarter.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we will, when we do the true up next year, the settlement, and we'll use actual 2023 audited
true. Okay, I
caseload,
wasn't
yes,
clear on that.
for your distribution that we'll do. And that's why when we look at this year, you've overpaid for the budget considerably
That'll get
based on
that'll get
caseload.
deducted from. Do we get it back in cash, or is
Correct.
it deducted off our future distributions or future, payments?
Yeah, I mean, we will be, exactly. I mean, part of the other, I mean, I know you asked about the 811, the other, what comes into this scenario too is any unused budget is also returned. And we are expecting that there's going to be, we're about at 85% of our budget this year, so there will be money that we
Right.
are returning. But yes, you will, I mean, you have, based on your caseload, because it was based on 2021, which was considerably larger,
Right.
have overpaid. So there will be a substantial amount that will be coming back when we do that true up
Okay.
after the audit.
And last question, I see that the judicial reimbursement from the state has stayed the same. That's based on statute or appropriation? Why is that not going up? I assume our judges are making more. Are they not?
They are, but where that really comes into play is the amount that initially comes out of our payroll. There's a portion that the judges get paid directly from the state of Michigan. There's a portion that comes out of our payroll first, and then we are reimbursed that amount. So the state of Michigan, at the end of the year, it basically is paid 100% for the judge's salary. It's just that we show that amount to show that there's a portion that we get reimbursed. That's why it's in there, to just reflect that.
And the annual reimbursement is for 3 judges?
Correct.
Okay. But the salaries are more than just judges.
Yes,
That's the clerks, that's the magistrates,
That's the-
security.
exactly, the entire staff of the court.
Okay.
Actually touched on one of the other information that was being incorrectly given to the other groups. They thought that if they got rid of a judge, that would lower our costs. We don't pay for the judges, as you pointed out, the state did. Plus they're elected officials. We can't decide to just remove one, but that was a mantra that was pushed in those 2 areas as well, was we could lower the cost by paying less judges. So again, that's not something that comes out of our funds. So thank you for pointing that out, because that helps kind of get more of the actual story.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Get the actual facts out helps.
Right.
With that said, I'm ready to make a motion that we approve the 48th District Court budget for 24-25 as presented.
Motion by Trustee Barnett to a motion to present as presented and provide the advancement.
Yes.
Okay. So motion by Trustee Barnett,
Support.
support by Trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That does pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time this evening.
And next we have approval of the purchase of new workout equipment through the exercise warehouse under the 2022 Assistance to Firefighters Grant presented by Chief LeRoy.
Good evening. This past summer, we were awarded another Assistance to Firefighter grant through FEMA in the amount of $146,000 and $146,770. This grant is it's a different grant because it's for health and wellness, and it's done in 3 parts. Tonight I'm coming to you for the equipment portion of it, which is for all 4 fire stations, treadmills, weights, stair climbers, of that nature. I will be coming in the future for the other portion of this grant is for health and wellness for firefighter physicals and cancer screenings as part of this grant. So this portion of the grant is $46,000, $633 in equipment. The other one is for the physicals, and then the third part is for training the trainers to be able to implement some workout type of firefighter-based workout strategies. And then we'll have 4 people per shift trained in that to allow them to make sure everybody's doing it safely and things like that. So the first part tonight is for the equipment, and we chose through the 3 bids in Exercise Warehouse. And the last time we had an Assistance to Firefighter grant and purchased the equipment, they also won that bid then. They have been a phenomenal company to work with. They are out here to maintain the equipment with we call them and they're out here the next day to fix it. The warranties have been well. The equipment has all worked well. So I'd like to ask tonight for the purchase of the workout equipment for $46,633. And through the AFG, that is a 10% match. So Bloomfield Township's portion of that grant is only $4,663.
Any questions for Chief? Yes.
Were we already budgeting to do these items and that we were able to get a grant to offset it, or was this not even on our capital improvement budget to begin with?
The way that we do it is we submit the grant and then we budget as if we were going to get the grant, and then if we don't, Jason removes it from the budget. So it is already accounted for in the capital improvement budget.
And then is the equipment going to be used only at one of the stations, or is it going to be for all the different stations?
No, this is for all 4 fire stations. We'll be getting a treadmill, a Stairmaster, and a weight set. So this is for all 4 fire stations.
Any other questions? Thank you for always looking for these grants. It's very helpful. With that, I'd look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the bid for the purchase of the workout equipment and the township match of $4,663.30.
Support.
Motion by Trustee Kalinsky, support by Trustee Barnett. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Next, we have approval to purchase of radio and communications equipment for the Emergency Operations Center Grant Project. Also, Chief LeRoy.
Yep. You may remember a couple weeks ago, Will Babinchuk came in and you approved the first part of the project was the outfitting of the room with the technology and all of the wiring and things like that in that contract. This is a grant that we received through FEMA and through some of our elected officials in the amount of $241,688. So this is the second part of that grant, and this is for communications equipment. This portion of the grant is for $62,745.63. It's a 25% cost share on this FEMA EOC grant. So our portion would be $15,686.41. Unlike the last purchase, though, this equipment is done through the state and county bid. There's only one, we can only get the equipment from one to get it programmed and all of that on the new county radio system, which is slowly going into effect. We've already changed over, but many of the fire departments, police departments in the county have not yet. And what's nice about this new system is these radios are on both the Oakland County system, and now you can talk across the state of Michigan, anywhere you're at in the state of Michigan. We've, even in our training, we talk to Menominee. As part of the state police radio system. So it's now we have a unified communications across the state of Michigan, inter-county, state. It makes it really work. So this, the EOC currently only has one radio down there. It doesn't have any way to, if assessing or were to go out and have to do operations out in the field and do some preliminary surveys, they don't have any way to talk to us. So this grant is going to be for 6 portable radios and 2 mobile bases. And those both mobile bases would be both police and fire programmed. So that way we can hopefully offset when the EOC goes into operations. If an event happens, we can take some load off of the dispatch centers and be able to do some things from the EOC that's not, and when dispatch is overwhelmed and things of that nature. This past year when we did the active shooter scenario training, our local dispatch centers will be overwhelmed. They're going to have trouble answering the radios and things of that nature. Whereas if we can get trained personnel in down there, we can offset some of those things with this radio package that we're going to be doing. So there will be 2 radios in the room set up, one on police channels, one on fire channels. We can now have seamless communications amongst the entire group. And then we'll also have 6 portable radios that will be able to be sent out into the field with both police and fire capabilities in them to communicate across whatever type of event is going on. This purchase is going to be through Motorola Solutions for $62,745.63. So our portion is $15,686.41.
for a motion if there's no questions.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Barnett.
Support.
Support by trustee Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass.
All right, thank you very much.
You're like the grant master now. Thank you very much. So now we have considering the appointment to the member of the Board of Review presented by Darrin Kraatz. See, we have a new employee today that already is dealing with what you dealt with for over a decade of people mispronouncing your name.
My entire life. That way.
We will not. You will be Kraatz.
So a couple months ago, I was in front of you guys asking you to appoint 2 alternate board members to the Board of Review. Tonight, I'm back to ask you to appoint a permanent member to the Board of Review to replace Trustee Kalinsky's spot. And I think we found the perfect candidate. Not only was he the only candidate that applied this time around, unlike last time, Mr. Davish actually has experience on a Board of Review at another local community. When we interviewed him, Jennifer and I, his demeanor, his personality, and more importantly, his expertise in real estate valuation is exactly what our community would expect. It's my opinion he'll fit in really well with the 2 other full-time board members that we have on board, Mr. Taylor and Mr. Wakad. And I think Jason will be a very, very good fit for our community. Not only does he have experience actually working on a Board of Review, he's also in the real estate profession in the immediate area. So with that, I guess I'd answer any questions you have or comments, concerns.
Anyone have any questions? What do you think of your replacement?
I had an opportunity to look over his resume, and he looks like a strong candidate.
Yeah.
And obviously, if Jen and Darrin think that he's a perfect fit, then I go with their expertise.
Yeah.
They obviously picked me, so.
I was waiting for it.
So
I
I
was
had
like,
a
there's
couple-
got to be a Chris spin on it.
I had some good things I wanted to say,
He's
but
Well, I was going to ask if that was the only one, because that's the only resume we saw.
he is the only one this time around. Last time when we were going for the alternate board members, we had 4 really strong candidates. We were by statute, only allowed 2 alternate members. I expected a couple of them to reapply, but never did. So we did get Jason though. So that's.
Well, it sounds like
that's
you're very
good.
happy with the candidate.
Yeah,
That's good to hear.
I'm extremely pleased with Jason, and Chris knows. I mean, it takes for a new board review member, it takes them a little time to get in there, kind of feel the nuances of how the board works. How the other board members interact with one another. For us, for me, it's how they interact with the residents first and foremost, and with Bob and Farhad and Chris, there was no issues with any of that type of, either them not getting along or them ruffling feathers when they had somebody appealing, and I think with Chris now being a trustee, I think Jason will be a good fit for Chris's replacement. So. Got the perfect personality, in my opinion. So,
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion based on recommendation of Darrin Kraatz that we would appoint Jason Dabish to be on the Board of Review.
Motion by trustee Kalinsky.
Support.
Support by trustee Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
thank you.
Does it sound strange to hear the real name?
Yeah, I just it's been said so often it doesn't even just go right
Aw.
over. So,
Well,
thank you.
thank you very much. Next, we have Director Corey Almas here today for considering the award of the Forest Lake Country Club sewer replacement contract.
Good evening, Board. So let's just get right into it. So the Forest Lake Country Club sanitary sewer, which was installed in the 1970s, the existing soil conditions are organic and peat, which are not favorable. The sanitary sewer was installed on steel piles back then. It serves approximately 600 residential homes. The pipe is compressed into an elliptical shape with longitudinal fractures and recently observed to have be hinged and is now deteriorating. I'll explain that here in a minute. So this is the location. Let me just use a pointer here. We're from this manhole here is, what do we say, it's 8034 is this location here. The existing pipe goes and cuts through the corner of the tennis court down to 8035. We'll reference that here in 1 second. So in this lower right-hand corner is where Forest Lake Country Club is, and that's where the proximity of where the pipe is compromised. And it serves all of these green gravity-fed sewer systems throughout the northwest portion of the township. So when I say the pipe is hinged, now this is, imagine if you will, kind of looking backwards, the camera looking back over, that's the top of the pipe. So if you're looking back at the ceiling, that's what you're looking at right here. So the camera actually is going through the pipe, pans back over top, and is looking back down the pipe. So what you're seeing there is the hinged piece. Now, when I say hinged, a pipe is normally circular, right? So when it's compressed, you see kind of an oval shape, elliptical shape. Now, when it's hinged, that top piece kind of caves in like that and separates. And that's what you're seeing right there. So that's not good.
Not good.
So the project constraints, we're in close proximity where the repair is going to be made, close proximity to Forest Lake. The depth of the existing sewer is quite substantial and requires to install new piles. The existing soil conditions and high water table are going to be challenging. Access to the site and a rear yard easement. The new sewer will be rerouted around the existing tennis courts. The existing sewage flows from the upstream service area will be maintained through the existing sewer, and then the time constraints to finish to not impact the FLCC during the FLCC off season. And then there's a possible conflict with the existing 24-inch storm drain. So if I go to this screen here, if you can see, we're going from this structure here. You can see again that the existing pipe is going right through the corner of the tennis court. What we're going to do is bypass that, install a new structure here, and tie into the existing downstream structure. So if there is a case to use our on-call contractor, this is it. The declining soil conditions or declining condition of the existing pipe, the time constraints of the project, the complexity of the scope of the work, project identified as an emergency repair. This is going back to 2022. Utilization of the township's on-call contractor would be ideal for this case. So, and that's D'Angelo Brothers Incorporated out of Farmington Hills, Michigan. D'Angelo provided a bid in the amount of $897,694, which was within 10% of the engineer's cost estimate for this work. Payment will be based on the installed quantities at the unit prices as bid. Quantities will be tracked and verified by the township's engineering consultant, HRC, and unanticipated items will be addressed by change orders through the contract. Staff's recommendation is to award the Forest Lake Country Club sanitary sewer replacement project to D'Angelo Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $897,694 with a 10% contingency approved through change order by ESD. Anything beyond that will be approved by the township supervisor.
Do we want to add just one thing? We normally, at the township supervisor, we cap it at what, 30%, don't we? And then I come back to the board after that. Are you saying this is such an emergency we can't?
Nope, I think we can do that.
Because normally I think we do put a cap on that.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, Danny, I think we're going to be fine with a 10%.
Okay.
And certainly less than 30, but I think you're right. If it goes beyond 30, we should probably come back to the board. So with that, I have a suggestion motion. So staff's recommendation is to move to approve the bid and award the contract to the Forest Lake Country Club sanitary sewer replacement project to D'Angelo Brothers Incorporated in the amount of $897,694. The township ESD shall have the authority to approve up to a 10% increase to said contract amount based on actual quantities needed to complete the project or conditions discovered in the field if said conditions and or quantities are confirmed by the township ESD and the township consulting engineers. Should quantities needed to complete the project conditions discovered in the field increase the contract to above 10%, ESD shall obtain approval by the township supervisor prior to ensuing approval of said contract amount.
Do you have any questions?
No, just a comment. I'm glad to see this is moving forward. It's been such a problem over there for so many years, and I just don't want to see a sewer failure impacting that many homeowners, any homeowners, let alone that many. So very pleased that it's moving forward in an expedited way, and it's certainly very important that we do this.
Yeah, and these are messy projects. Porter's Lane over there, and
Yep.
like you said, of the soils and being on pylons, it's great that you guys are looking for problems before they become, like Neil is saying, before they get out of control. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah, Corey, the on-call contractor, that was a vendor that we pre-vetted and awarded, and we can award to them based on the emergency status.
Yeah,
So that means that we're not getting 3 bids. So I understand it?
Yeah, that's correct. In cases like this, I mean, first of all, we know D'Angelo's worked in the township on very similar situations in the past. D'Angelo comes with a great recommendation or a great experience with the township. So, and a great working relationship with the township. But we're talking about when we're talking access to this site, we're going to have to go through, our construction traffic is going to go through the Forest Lake Country Club parking lot and access around this existing tennis court, create basically a haul road through here and access through the backside to get to this working area here. Not only that, you've got the tight proximity to Forest Lake and the excavation area right here. To go out to bid and to go with a lower bidder that you have very little familiarity with, it would be a major concern. Not only that, to go through the bidding process, now you're delaying the construction. Okay, so that in dealing with the time constraints that was relayed to us and expressed to us through the Forest Lake Country Club, we felt imperative to go with our emergency underground contractor for this project.
But the constraints are
The one that we used for do you remember in 2021 when we had the sinkhole at the senior center, that it was a threat of spreading and then the parking lots were going to fail? They were the ones that we ended up using the same option of calling them in for that.
okay. I just want to make sure that the constraint is truly an emergency, and the fact that the country club wouldn't be able to use their tennis courts in the summer or spring like that, that's not a good enough reason to me. But I mean, yes, I feel for them, but they shouldn't have built their tennis court on top of our sewer. So, but if you're telling me that to add time to go to bid and then the time it would take to get that approved and then started, it would be till a year from now or something like that. We can't wait that long because of the condition of these sewers. Then I understand.
Well, again, I should probably add that the country club uses this area here of their parking lot for their staging of materials throughout it, whether they have improvements on the golf course. There's also the access here to the ramp that's used throughout by residents of Forest Lake and on Forest Lake for boat access. So doing this work in the summer would not just impact the country club, but also impact residents on the lake itself and access to the lake. So to answer your question, yeah, it would delay it. The earliest we could probably get on this if we were to go out to bid would probably be spring, I would guess, maybe early summer. But then you're impacting.
Sure. And if we approve it tonight, how quickly can you get them on the project?
We're scheduled to start 1st of July. Like the first, I'm sorry.
January.
I'm sorry.
Wrong J month.
Me, it wasn't about the country club, it was the heave. Because the other, like Porter's Lane wasn't heaving yet or hinged. It was squished and we looked at that as emergency. Yep. Porter's Lane affected 70 homes. Yep. To me, this picture wasn't as telling to me as the sewer systems that lead into it.
Yep.
That was even more than Porter's Lane.
Well, and the other thing, correct. The other thing too, I mean, if we were to wait and delay this, aren't we just increasing the risk for a sewage failure and impacting the homeowners?
Neil, that's a great point. That camera footage was taken in September. Now, the report in 2022 was that the pipe was compressed to an elliptical shape.
Right.
Now, I didn't see the 2022 video, but I saw the September 2023 video. And I would like to believe that if that pipe was hinged in 2022, staff would have probably back then expedited this process. So if it wasn't an emergency state in 2022, it is now.
It was one on the list, but Porter's Lane, which hadn't hinged yet,
Right.
was in a worse state, and we looked at that one. That this one's actually, like you said, worse off than what I remember seeing.
I would not feel comfortable leaving this pipe for another year.
So I just have one question. So being that this is on their property, and like Michael said, they built over the previous sewer, is all of the costs on this on the township, or does the country club, because it's their property, bear some of the cost?
No, it's a public sewer. Now, I don't know when the tennis court was constructed. I know it goes back to like the early 90s, 1994. It was there based on aerial photos that the tennis court was there. So I don't know exactly when this problem began. I don't know if it was a result of the tennis court construction. I can't confirm that or say or have the country club bear any of the cost of that. I can't appoint or assign culpability to the construction of the tennis court. In 2009, this segment here, it's just the segment right downstream from the existing downstream structure that we're tying into. That segment was reconstructed in 2009, but that was because of either the pilings being the existing pilings being shoved up or elevating into the sewer system, causing a major backup then, or if it was compression of the above ground and the pipe being pushed down into the pilings. I don't know how that happened, but again, in 2009, the township utilized the on-call contractor to perform this work here. But again, I don't know if I can assess culpability and assign culpability to the construction of the tennis court, being that it's, the pipe itself is what now 50 years old, plus or minus.
I just thought maybe because it's their property and they did build over the sewer.
Yeah,
That's all.
It's a good question.
Because if I built over my sewer, and it failed, you guys would probably, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I just was trying to understand that.
No, I think by going around the tennis court, you're not impacting in any major way reconstruction of the tennis court. I think that could get costly. I think if there was no option and we had to go through it, I don't know that I'd have a problem reinstalling or removing the tennis court and telling the country club, the court replacement's on you because you built over top of an existing sewer. I wouldn't have a problem doing that, but I think there's a better way of going around the tennis court and bypassing the tennis court, doing it this way. And it saves the tennis court, and I think it's just an all-around better option.
Okay, thank you.
And not only that, Val, is that you can maintain flow in that sewer during construction. We're tapping this structure here with that flow being maintained, so there's no bypass pumping while we do the work.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Gets expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Corey.
Chris?
No, and I think you hit on it really well, Corey. I appreciate it, that even if we want to assign cost or burden, at the end of the day, we can't change what already happened. We know what's happening now, how much impact it has to our residents. And by bypassing it, it does alleviate any impact or additional costs that we may have on the Forest Lake Country Club by having them have to redo the tennis courts, right? Like,
Yep.
Not happy how this happened. You're not supposed to build into easements, but it did happen. And now we have a way to bypass it without having to bypass pumps, which hopefully reduces the cost of this emergency contract, as well as ensuring that they shouldn't be able to build on it in the future. So appreciate it. Thank you, Corey.
There's a lot of strange things in the 70s, 80s, 90s that we run across where they didn't quite, the world wasn't quite as aware of environmental issues like we are now, that building over a sewer would be something no one would consider nor be allowed to do in today's society. So,
Well, for this very reason.
yeah, exactly. Or even like people who plant trees in the right of way and then they end up getting cut up. It's just, I don't think people really think of those things back then.
No.
Yeah. Anybody have any other questions? I look for a motion.
Make a motion and incorporate the suggested motion that's already been read by Corey.
You don't have to read it again. Trustee Barnett
Thank you, Corey.
made a motion.
Second, can I speak on the motion?
Yeah.
Are we making an amendment to how much the increased cost would be?
30%.
Just
To add
30%.
that 30% cap.
Mhm.
I feel safer with that.
Yep.
I'd rather bring it back than.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I'll make the, support it based on that amendment.
Great. Second by Trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. So next we have consider approval of amended purchasing policy, and this is going to start the Director Theis show. So we have Jason from Finance Department.
So you had in the packet a red line as well as a fully accepted clean copy. Worked with department heads on some suggestions and the officials, and so what you have is the kind of final version brought to you. Some of it's cleanup of language or clarification, but the biggest piece, which you probably saw, is increasing 2 of the limits. So I started looking at this a few months ago, just based on it had been so long before this was amended the first time in March of 21. Before that, it had been 15 plus years. So I'm going to try and maybe every few years revisit. Doesn't mean there'll always be amendments, but try and get on a schedule. So with inflation and then talking to other communities of what their policy limits are, that's how I came up with what I'm proposing. So purchases less than 5,000, no PO. Purchases from 5,000 to 9,999 would have a purchase order. And then and then increasing the last one from 5,000 to 10,000, going up to the 34,999. Looking at what else is out there, I'm comfortable with leaving that formal bid at 35. And there's other communities that you can tell they haven't revisited their purchasing policy in many years, because I mean there's some that are still at like a $500 for purchase order, and they're doing formal bids at $10,000. And these are across the board, big communities, small communities. One of our neighbors, Bloomfield Hills, is, for an example, their level is 5, 10, and 20. They're much smaller than us. So that's what I'm presenting. Is there any specific questions or concerns?
No, I personally like that we didn't do the bidding higher also, because I think at 35 it makes sense to include everybody in those, unless it's the professional services are already covered, but it just makes sense to bring it to the board. Thanks for all your work on this too. He called a lot of different communities. Got a lot of information, so I appreciate it.
I also reached out to my fellow treasurers through the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association and asked what their limits were, and by far, and this includes a lot of small communities, $5,000 was the threshold to get the purchase order. And so the fact that we were at 1,500 after all this time is really burdensome, I think, given the extra work that goes into approving POs and processing them and all that kind of stuff. But, obviously we still have a requirement to make sure the transactions are legal and documented. And that's a theme that we'll be talking about tonight. But so I definitely agree with these changes.
And when you talk about the cumbersome of POs, you're right, because a lot of people may not know, but a PO is seen by 4 people. So it's the person requesting it, the department head, Jason, and myself see every single PO. So at 1,500, that did slow down a lot of items that but now we'll still be able to if we wanted to spot check if the auditors need to spot check. But yeah, this should make some of those easier. And then when we do payroll and vouchers on top of those 4, that then goes to Michael and Martin. So you have 6 people looking at payroll and vouchers before it comes to this board. So there's a lot of checks and balances along the way. So do we have any more questions? And if not, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Barnett,
Support.
support by trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That does pass. Next, we have considering approval for additional defined benefit pension plan contribution for fiscal year 2024.
Okay, thank you. So there's a memo in the packet. I don't have a presentation, but in summary, what first maybe kind of go down this path was the investment earnings this year are well outperforming what we've seen, what I've seen in my 16 years at the township, earning 5% most of I think pretty much.
Michael's ready to say
all
you're
of
welcome.
the first 6 months. It did start before August. Yeah, 5% on our money market sweep. So we're at, through 6 months in, we were exceeding 5 times the budget, which the budgeted revenue of investment earnings was $600,000. So, we're going to be, based on that trend, we're going to be about 5 times over budget. We're already at 1.6 as of 9/30. So that, in addition to what you heard earlier, the chief talking about in the last few months they hired some officers. Those are new, and possibly some more. But even between them and other departments, people are coming and going. But on average, about 10 vacant positions at any point so far in this year for you to count. So that obviously is savings in wages, savings in all the various benefits, healthcare, retirement. And then good timing again. Earlier you heard Pat Dunn from the court talking about our caseload ratio. Now that does affect revenues as well as expenses, but it's not a one-for-one match. And it's a little different because they're on a calendar year. We're on a March year end. And then he talked a little bit about the settlement. So the settlement comes after their year end is over, but before our fiscal year. So there's always a little bit of difference in timing. So those are kind of the main drivers of why I started thinking about what, in my opinion, what would be the most beneficial way, being that bulk of it, those investment earnings, is completely unanticipated. It's like found money. And then on the expense side, we have these long-term liabilities that we have to pay down. The defined benefit pension, ADC, is calculated every spring. It's on that plan is on a calendar year basis. So by making this additional contribution, it's not going to affect what we have to pay in later's agenda item, the 24-25 budget, because that amount has already been determined based on the 1/1/23 actuarial. So by making this additional contribution, we'll see the effects for the first time in fiscal year 26. So again, the calculation is done beforehand, so we know what to budget as the ADC. Our prior person we dealt with at Milliman, as well as our new person that we recently heard from, Jack, both agree you get better bang for your buck by going into the defined benefit, because that's the only plan that has a state law mandated minimum that you have to pay what the ADC is. The OPEB you don't have to pay. The only thing that is kind of guiding us on those contributions is the corrective action plan with the state under PA 202. So we have more flexibility there, and that's such a larger liability. We have a plan in place that we're addressing it. Eventually, we'll get to that 40%, and that'll relieve some of the extra paperwork on those filings. But the second page laid out how it affects each of those budgets. And I did reach out to the library before bringing it here to make sure that they would be able to absorb the increase on their portion as well. They're about a little less than 4% of the total liability is their responsibility. And that comes from them, not the township's books. So I am asking for approval to, when we do the annual wire payment on that, to send $7.5 million, which is higher than the $4.8 million that is the minimum.
Do you have any questions?
I just want to commend Jason for bringing this to our attention. I think you're absolutely right that putting the money into the pension plan, into the trust, allows us to maximize the returns that we're going to get on that money, because in the pension plan, we can put that money directly to work into our equities portfolio. So we'll see tremendous growth in our asset base, and the actuarial valuation that's done every year will take into account that extra return. And as Jason said, mean that in future years we'll pay less of an ADC. So I thought it was a great idea. I'm glad you brought it to us. So I definitely support it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Chris?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it again. And like you said, this will have effects on future budgets. So the fact is we're investing money now that we have, as you said, this is found money, if you will, or money that we weren't anticipating, and we're putting it to work to reduce expenses later on down the road, which gives us more options. The point is we can have more options for future boards to utilize those monies in the most appropriate way. So I appreciate that. And again, as we talked about, we already are putting another $500,000 in that OPEB liability. So even above that required amount based on PA 202 for our corrective plan, we're still going above and beyond that by $500,000. So why not utilize the extra money that we're capturing and put it someplace else that gives us more bang for our buck? So I really appreciate it, and I absolutely support it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you've pointed out it's a good problem to have, that we had greater earnings, and I totally support it. And if everyone is in agreement, I'd be happy to make the motion.
Motion by Trustee Murray.
To put the additional earnings into the DB pension plan.
A motion by Trustee Murray.
Support.
Support by Trustee Kalinsky.
Can I just clarify for a second, Dirk? Do we need to specify that we're authorizing a contribution of $7.5 million
Yeah, yes. Yeah, you can just say,
to be made by December 31st?
I'm not sure what date you have to make it by, but
This calendar year.
you should
summer
specify
31st.
the 7 million.
Okay, so
I'm
it's
sorry,
okay if you-
7,500,000.
Correct.
Right, because there was going to be 4.8.
right.
So to go to the 7.5 million
Yes.
contribution before the end of 2023,
So by December 31st.
December 31st.
Support.
We have motion by Trustee Murray, support by Trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. And before we get into Jason's budget presentation, just a reminder, the reason why there were some assumptions made in there, of course, there's never an OMA meeting issue here because, as you know, as trustees, I don't give you, I don't poll you for answers and such, so none of you would have seen this budget before tonight. So the reason things were included is this is an assumptive budget. There's a lot of trend, there's not hardcore data in some of what we're expecting yet, which is why January's will be stronger in its actuality. This is based on trends, projections, and assumptions based on people who make really good financial decisions. I was going to assume that at least 4 of us would have seen the DB. That's why that was put in there. So regardless of any insinuations, as you know, this is the first time any of you saw that budget. So whenever we hear things like that, we like to nip that in the bud because we don't have OMA violations. So next we have the preliminary budget presentation.
Hello again. Quick outline. Same as last year. We'll talk a little bit about projections for the current year, and then preliminary budget projections for next year. So looking at the 3 main operating funds in the current year, Looks like revenues will exceed expenditures. We just talked about one of those items that have driven to that is the interest investment earnings. As Danny, Supervisor Walsh said, as we get closer to fiscal year end, we'll have a better idea of the amount, and we'll discuss the available options of at that time. Can change dramatically, primarily being driven again by investment earnings, vacant positions. Most have been public safety, employee health care, and then again the caseload ratio.
And the reason why that public safety is important is because, for example, 10 of those is over $1 million. So when we hear, oh, you have all this extra revenue, it's because we're trying to hire police officers, which you see we're doing as fast as we can, but there aren't, unfortunately, enough people out there trying to be a police officer. So just that all these numbers seem large, hopefully we can quickly get rid of $1 million of that by getting 10 new officers.
So taxable value of $4.8 billion. It's equating to just over 7% net increase to tax revenues. If you recall, this was the first year with no Headley rollback. It's also the first year we're collecting the renewed and combined public safety millage. We don't have to talk about the investment earnings again. Fire department, finally, we've talked about this many times. It seems like it took forever, but we're finally receiving the SOAR truck. Chief LeRoy is expecting that to come in January, and that was partially funded by a state grant. It seems like it was awarded 2 or 3 years ago. It was a long process getting that. So I think 500,000. That didn't cover the entire truck. I can't recall.
About 825.
Yeah.
It was 500 when we put in the request.
Yeah.
It became 825 by the time it got approved.
On the expenditures for the current year, there was the contractual 2% wage increases, the defined benefit ADC payment, that is 83% funded as of the last report. There was the proposal we just went over for increasing the defined benefit pension payment. We have the OPEB contribution of 1.75, that's 22% funded at the last report date. And 500,000, and we budgeted for 500,000 more. The plan was to do 1.25. We have 1.75 in there. The 48th District Court projected decrease of expenditures of about $650 this year. The other major driver we talk about every year is healthcare. It's one of our largest expenditures, and it's driven by actual claims plus industry trend. And it's one of those things that since we've had the last contract negotiations, as well as switching to a self-insured plan, self-funded plan, that we've been doing really well containing what used to be an automatic 5 to 15% increase year over year. So forecasting healthcare to be about 10% under budget for the year. Again, that can change. That's based on data through the first 6 months. And the projection will hone that in and get more accurate as we get every month under our belt. Switching gears to 24-25. So preliminarily, we have everything balanced. There are many assumptions and projections at this time, many of which will be changed and refined. More meetings will be had between the departments. And I'm sure there's more projects and capital items that will get added, and as the department heads continue to get everything buttoned up. The next few slides, revenue, projected taxable value of $5.1 billion, equating to a 6.5% net increase to the tax revenues. And at this time, the assessor is thinking and hearing from other communities again that it's possible we may have 2 years in a row with no heavily rolled back. Now that calculation doesn't actually get finalized until after we approve the budget. It's something done at the county level. But hopefully by the time we get to the March approval, we'll have a more comfortable idea of whether we think it could tip one way or the other. Similar amount of state revenue sharing, which is nice. They've kind of plateaued that and given us little increases where, there were many years where we would be talking about how much they were gonna decrease it. So that's been on a nice trend. And court revenues and expenditures, again, you heard the presentation. They have a similar budget or same budget they're presenting for next calendar year that was in the current year. I'm not expecting a huge change in our caseload ratio. And again, that's kind of delayed anyway. So we're putting in similar amounts of revenues and expenditures that we've been putting in the budget for that portion of our responsibilities. And then not going to be as aggressive as we're seeing the actual investment earnings this year. All the talk is that sometime in either maybe around third quarter of next calendar year, they're expecting the rates to come down. So I'll be working closely with the treasurer before it gets to that point to see if we can lock in some higher rates with whatever vehicles are available before that occurs. So I wouldn't expect, based on what we know today, I wouldn't expect another $3+ million revenue item there. The expense side contracts, there's a 2.75% wage increases that are coming for 1 of 24. Healthcare will go up a few percentage points, but we'll have those final renewal amounts in January. The ADC payment, again, that's not getting affected by the increased amount this year that was already published in the most recent actuarial report. The OPEB contribution right now, I have in the minimum standard 1.25. We can revisit that as we get closer to approval, if there's room to possibly do more. And one request from the Director of Public Works was to get the paving contractor work in the road fund back to pre-COVID levels, which would bring it up to $750,000. I think right now it's at $250 or $300, so it's a pretty sizable amount dollar-wise, but it still doesn't get a lot of work done.
They'll let them do concrete though. Right now we can't do concrete at all, and most SADs aren't for concrete; they're for the asphalt. This would allow them to do some cutouts of concrete, and there are certain areas that was well used, and so they can't get SADs, they can't do other options, so this would allow some of that to come back. I think, what did he say? It would be about, like, he would be able to do up to a half a mile. I mean, granted, it'd be sporadically throughout, but
one side a half a mile long.
One side of a half a mile. That's how expensive concrete can get. So a few $100,000 of concrete was one side of half a mile, and it's just of potholes. So, or not, cutting out because they have to cut it all out. So.
Positions, there are 5 brought back. 1 road operator. They haven't. They've been sharing some employees over winter when they need the drivers in the plow truck. So they're going to reorganize, and so that person can stay where they're at, and they can have a full-time operator running one of the trucks. The fire department would like to add 3 unit firefighter / EMS personnel, and you'll see, well, it's not a 1-for-1 swap, but there's a significant decrease in overtime by doing that. So you're not taking on the full burden of three people. And the cable, this was another one that through attrition has been vacant for a while, the senior production specialist, with all the activities they have going on there now with the new director That was one of the items they requested. I'm not going to run through all of these. I have a few slides kind of listing out the big items. There's some stormwater costs again. Every year we have RTUs, that's rooftop units like HVAC systems. All these things that through all these various buildings we have, whether they're fire stations or on township campus grounds, that we have to maintain and replace as their lives are depreciating. And then vehicles. We've run into still a delay in certain vehicles. We did take delivery of probably about 10, not police patrol though. Those are still hanging out there. We're waiting to.
I think they did get some VIN numbers though, correct? Which means
There
they're
were some
finally
VIN numbers assigned, which was a good sign.
going to make them.
Something's coming. Yeah, that it's in progress. The bricks station alerting system for fire, that you may have seen that before. It's made it onto some budgets at some points throughout the year, and then they back off and try and make the system they have in place working. So now I think it's actually going to happen. They're ready to move forward with getting that in place. That rescue truck, pretty sure that's already been approved, because that's one of those things that takes more than a 12-month period to build. And then I just wanted to give a brief update on ARPA. They did release, I thought it was a little bit more clear, but every time I read it, I'm not so sure, the definition of obligation. So that's that December 31, 2024 deadline, that everything has to be obligated. So they say an order placed for property and services and entry into contract subawards and similar transactions that require payment. So first I thought, okay, so an order placed for property and services would be good enough, but then it says and, so now I'm wondering if you need to meet both those requirements. So I think probably to be safe as we get these projects going, some sort of written agreement should be, whether it's a formal contract or something that both parties have signed, would probably be the best way to cover ourselves to make sure we've met that obligation. So we received that 4.4 million, and then here's a quick rundown of what's been approved and awarded by the board. About 2.4 of it. Obviously, the biggest portion is that first one, the ladder apparatus of 1.7. You had the space needs come before you, the document management, the phone system. The director of IT brought those last three items more recently, and then on the right are all those other items that, those are other categories that there's been informal interest or the go-ahead by the board to say, go ahead and get the RFPs. So those are all items that are in various stages of development that haven't yet gotten the formal resolution board approval to.
Can I update one thing that some might not know about is the senior center parking lot? The reason that hasn't been brought forward is we're still trying to find out if it's the 10-year or the 100-year storm. Depending on when something was built, it used to be the 10-year storm, and that's what our township campus falls under. But based on the amount of changes that are made, there's a suggestion that we now would have to follow to fix that parking lot, the 100-year storm, because it goes outside of what's considered part of the older standards. So if so, it goes from about a couple $100,000 to over $1 million because of the difference in the amount of stormwater management on a 10-year storm versus 100. That's why that hasn't been brought to you yet. We're trying to get, HRC, I believe, is working with them to get a final assumption on what it is so we know what to even bring to you. But that is one of the projects that's a big outlier. Sorry.
Huge difference.
Yes, 10-year and 100-year. That's also what some of the other projects like up at the tennis club and the skate club, they're working right now to find out if it's 10 or 100. It significantly changes your projects.
And then just want to put this in the back of your head to keep this slide for reference going forward. Since we're talking about budgets, and millages obviously affect budgets that we do have. These are the next ones that are on the list to come up. And in the past, there's a couple things that have always been considered that you should consider. Do you want it to avoid special election cycles, to avoid the cost of those? And then do you want to avoid having a budget issue where a millage is expiring after you've approved the budget, so you can't really count on that money coming in? You don't want to approve a budget. I mean, you can do it legally. There's nothing wrong with it, but just do you want to approve a budget not knowing whether that millage renewal is going to pass, I guess is the way to say it. So typically they've been non-special and done in advance or early so that we knew before budget approval time whether we could count on that money or not. So I think it'd be a good slide for you to hang on to, because obviously if something is going to happen in August or November 24, working backwards, I know there's deadlines for ballot language and all of that, so it's not that far off.
And that is one thing that we'll want to know what the board's opinion of, in particular, of do we stick with the avoiding special elections which would mean none in 25, so we move it forward, or do we keep it as is? Because that's why we had pushed forward and combined the last one, but we also asked for an increase. This one would just be a combination, not an increase. So do we combine them, avoid the special election, make it 2 millages instead of 4 with no increase on that, or do we go ahead and stay with the way it used to be and it'd be 3 of them with always requiring that special election? So it's something to think about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any questions for Jason?
As usual, it's a great preliminary presentation, and I know there's going to be many changes and many comments and opportunities for the board we're going to have study sessions.
Right, that'll be after the January. So for the newer trustees too, this one is, like we said, based on projections and assumptions. We haven't gotten all of the information from the state and others, but statutorily, I am required to bring you a budget in October, or by the end of November. That's great for those that have a different fiscal year than us. We're not till April, so we rely on information in a different way. So I am statutorily giving you the budget based on projections, but once we get information, then in January, we would come back with an updated budget, and then the study sessions start, so that by March, we take in all of the comments, suggestions, changes, because we do not ever break OMA. And so then we would come to you in March with the final budget that would be and they are significantly different by March usually than what you see now. So, because that's where we get more input. Yeah, that'll be, get ready for January, February meetings. Any other questions? Okay. Do we need to do a motion to accept? Or just, no? All right.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. So next we have the consider resolution to comply with provisions of Public Act 152 of 2011.
So we have to do this every calendar year. At the end of the year, we have the 3 options: hard cap, 80/20, opt out. State of Michigan releases hard cap. They say it's increased for inflation. Again, not really, because they don't use healthcare inflation, they use normal inflation. So if you were, just to give you the example, if elected for 2023, the amount that an employee per paycheck over 24 pays would have been 104.29 for a single and 355.46 for a family. If we had elected the 80%, 80/20 rule for 23, they would have paid 82.52 and 239.26. And then reminder that Township has elected to opt out every year since PA 152 was enacted. We've taken the stance to collectively bargain on the appropriate cost share with the employees through the union contracts, not just looking at premium like this act does. Currently, Well, actually, it's an increased in the contract. So as of 1/1/24, the cost share per paycheck will be 50 for single and 100 for family, 24 pays. And then if the township does not opt out, the union contract language does require the township to make all enrolled employees whole for that increased cost share that you've done outside of collective bargaining.
Any questions? All right. What's that?
There's a resolution to be adopted.
Do you want me to read the resolution in? Okay. So there was a resolution in the
So
packet.
the motion be to approve the resolution as contained
In the packet. I thought I was gonna make one of you guys
No,
read
no,
it.
no.
So would there be a motion to accept the resolution as provided?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Motion by trustee Barnett,
Support.
support by trustee Kalinsky. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Next, we have consider approval of the amended credit card use policy presented by Treasurer Michael Schostak.
Okay.
Oh, and Jason.
I have a couple.
Do you want to start? Or do you want?
I have some thoughts, and then
Okay.
you can go through maybe the details if anyone wants that. So, all right. So just some thoughts here. Good governance requires us to operate transparently with robust internal controls, which are, euphemistically called checks and balances. We receive the highest possible opinion from our auditors because we properly document all transactions and utilize effective internal controls. So the favorable audit and the strength of our internal controls are key factors in keeping our AAA credit rating. So this policy, the credit card policy, is an example of the type of controls that we have in place. By law, as treasurer, I'm empowered to make available township credit cards to certain designated employees. In consultation with the finance director, I assign credit limits to individual cards based on need. No one has more credit than they need, and I can raise or lower limits easily as needed. I am responsible, along with the finance director, to review all charges and ensure that transactions are lawful, approved, and have proper documentation. This policy does not circumvent the purchasing policy that we just approved 15 minutes ago. Transactions that require purchase orders as per that policy or any other pre-approvals must still be obtained before they could use a credit card to pay. This policy is consistent with the accounting department's efforts to move us away from issuing paper checks as payments. And there is a mechanism to discipline card users who act improperly, and of course our employees would never do that, but there is a mechanism. So those are my thoughts.
Pretty much summarizes it. I think I don't have anything to add. That's good.
Any questions?
Any questions on the policy? Happy to answer them.
Yeah, is this, since you had reached out to some of the people that you knew and the other treasurers through that organization, is this the best case scenario that they use for their own controls and their own controls as well as their own policies on their?
Yeah, I mean, we have this policy and we need to have a written policy as per the Public Act.
Mm-hmm.
Most small communities don't have credit cards, so they don't deal with that issue. But you need to have a certain size before the credit card companies are willing, because there's no one personally guaranteed here on these cards, right? So before a bank is willing to do that, they've got to make sure that you've got some substance, asset base, whatever, that makes you creditworthy. Because ultimately it is the township's, promise to pay that allows us to use these cards. But to answer your question, the law requires that we have a written policy. Every card holder must sign an acknowledgement of this policy before they can have their cards. Also, one other thing I can add is to avoid any potential conflicts and in keeping with our good internal controls, I do not have a credit card.
Neither does Jason.
Neither do I.
And neither does Jason, right? So, but our other department heads, supervisor, the clerk.
Well, not every department head, because I don't use my credit card much at all. I think maybe just for when I go to the conference, like the Michigan Township, but like assessing doesn't have a credit card, so Darrin uses mine, and Some of the smaller ones, yeah.
Okay.
Some of
Yeah,
the,
yep.
well, because basically if
They don't need it.
if it's
then-
just
Yeah,
an
if it-
annual thing that you're
I guess
doing,
their credit
like,
limit is 0,
yeah,
which
they
is why they don't have a card.
they use
Yeah,
they use
because-
mine for their annual.
Yeah, they have very little need for one.
Right.
So, but I mean, you see this more in the police and fire departments. They use it to buy as needed supplies, to, here and there. A few years ago when we had a boil water advisory because of a water issue, DPW bought bottles of water. We gave those out to residents. And that was all done, on an emergency basis. We couldn't go through a process, and, they just got what they needed. So, we still require department heads to use this as a last resort. So unless something has to be purchased with a credit card because they're buying it online, like I know Christine at the senior center uses it to buy tickets to the opera when she has an outing, for her seniors to go to the opera or whatever. I'm making that up, but that's an example of if she's buying it online, we can't get a receipt and Jason mail a check. And we're trying to get away from checks, so this is, a part of it.
Any other questions? I look for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the amended credit card policy as presented by Treasurer Schostak.
Motion by Trustee Kalinsky,
Support.
support by Trustee Barnett. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. And then next we have payroll and vouchers for their approval of November 27th. We've all had a chance to look. Unless there's any changes or suggestions, I'd look for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Barnett,
Support?
support by Trustee Murray. And Martin's not here, so who's going to make that motion to adjourn?
We need to vote on that, by the way?
Yeah.
About letting Martin not
No.
say it? I'm sorry. Yes. With
There was a motion
all in
and a
favor of
second.
The motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Yes. Sorry about
I'm
that.
happy to sit in for Martin. I'll make that motion to adjourn.
Motion
I
by
will
Trustee
second.
Barnett. Second by Treasurer Schostak. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.